Hi, everybody. I'm just going through and looking. Good to see you all. Wow. I thought I'd start with a poem by Du Fu. It's a very famous, beloved Chinese poet from like the 8th century. It's said that he and Li Po were best friends. Is another beloved, very famous poet in China. Though they only actually met in person a handful of times, but they held each other in that way throughout their lives. I find it such a powerful example of good Dhamma friendship. So this is a poem called To My Retired Friend Wei, who he was visiting. It's almost as hard for friends to meet as for the morning and evening stars. Tonight, then, is a rare event. Joining in the candlelight, two men who were young not long ago, but now are turning gray at the temples. To find that half our friends are dead shocks us, burns our hearts with grief. We little guessed it would be 20 years before I could visit you again. When I went away, you were still unmarried. But now these boys and girls in a row are very kind to their father's old friend. They ask me where I've been on my journey. And then, when we have talked a while, They bring and show me wines and dishes, spring chives cut in the night rain, and brown rice cooked freshly in a special way. My host proclaims it a festival. He urges me to drink 10 cups. But what 10 cups could make me as drunk as I always am with your love in my heart? Tomorrow the mountains will separate us. After tomorrow, who can say? Like there's so many levels that we can acknowledge the real preciousness of this coming together in this way over this time. The sense of how rare this quality of friendship can be, how the conditions of our lives can make it so difficult to come back together, and the conditions of the world right now, that have kept all of us in our separate places physically. Just how amazing we've had this chance to actually feel like we're together, be together, practice together, share this sense of Dhamma friendship in this hall. How powerful it is, how supportive it is, how fleeting it is also. I think there's also just the level of with ourselves, this how long has it been since we've really been with ourselves in this way? How busy we can get, how our lives trajectories can take us, even with practice such at the heart of our motivation, our heart of our inspiration. Conditions are not always supportive for us coming back to ourselves in this way. We have these sometimes feels like short periods, sometimes feels like long periods, but time passes, we visit ourselves again. And the beauty of that, the poignancy of that, I think that sense of the fleetingness of it in terms of this quality of conditions that we've created here together and independently, of real support, of really, as someone said today, sanctifying each of our own homes and our individual spaces, turning our homes into temples. Just the incredible strength actually that develops, that builds in each of us, in our sense of faith of, okay, of course, there is something so incredible about being able to go to a retreat center when that can happen. And we've all loved that and value that and appreciate that. And I think there's something about this experience, as powerful and mind-opening and interesting as it's been for everyone, most everyone will still understand and feel some sense of even a deeper appreciation for what these places can offer us, whether it's the land that's been protected and the ancient forests that we might be in, or just the care of staff and the infrastructure of a place that supports us in our practice, and how what it's like to come to a place where it feels so protected in that way. We're nourished, we're taken care of. So many people outside of us are doing all of their work so that we can practice and understand the beauty of that, the merit from that, the power of that, and how different that is for most of us in our home lives. Most people don't have people bringing you food or uh, erasing your schedule, taking all the phone calls, dealing with whatever, and many folks are sitting in apartments or houses where there's other people sitting or other people not. Many people have housemates, roommates who are not yogis right now, and there's a huge range of how that's being held and where that feels supportive or where it feels jarring. And it's this incredible stretching, this incredible really settling into the depth of how powerful it is when the conditions are there, that support can come from outside of ourselves, and how hard it can be when the conditions need to be almost entirely self-conjured, self-created, self-protected, and defended. But also the real strength and power that's ultimately necessary for every yogi to really understand that we are capable of that, that we are capable of creating this temple wherever we go, and that even if a solar flare comes and destroys the internet, we still can create this in our homes. Or if we can't be in our homes, that we can be in the forest and still find this, that the temple is here, right? This possibility of peace, of love, compassion, of generosity and care that is beyond conditions. There's a different, it's like every person I've talked to, I know the teachers that we've reflected on this with our yogis, that everyone has had this sense of this is possible, that you can do this. There are going to be things that are different about this kind of practice than in a retreat center. Maybe it doesn't feel as concentrated in some ways, but really understanding that you can get just as quiet, you can get just as sensitive, just as much insight is available with the strength of mindfulness and a different orientation towards concentration, more of a momentary concentration rather than maybe quite as much of an absorptive concentration. That it is possible, that each one of us have had moments of really touching into that, and the strength that has developed in everyone. I mean, it's across the board. It's just been awesome to see that. Whether we have doubt about it or whether we feel good about our practice or all that stuff, it's like, you know, that's all just views. But it's like everyone has done it, you know, and quite a range of, uh, you know, previous momentum, quite a range of conditions and practice styles, and it's really powerful to see that. And that amidst that, to still really value the conditions that are here, this support of the community and the technology and the sense of, wow, how wonderful it is to know, actually, even if we are independent, that we have this community. And of course it's much bigger than the people who have been coming to this retreat, the sense of we aren't alone, and those reminders and the teachings, the tradition, the sense of support we can feel, how powerful that is. And then, ultimately really to take in this aspect of, we chant this metta chant every night, and there is that phrase at the end, after it goes through loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, to kamasaka, may all beings be owners of their actions, accept ownership of action. And that there really is I think a more deeply ingrained strength around that, and awareness and sensitivity that comes through sitting at home and being more independent and having to negotiate these things around discipline and determination and your schedule, and where are you relaxing and where are you resting and where are you kind of flowing with the natural rhythms of the mind and body? Where are you, holding it capable of maybe a little more? Where are you giving it a break instead of stressing the system out? The sense of, yeah, we have teachings, we have the teachers, we have books, we have centers, we have structure around it, but that ultimately it's always our own actions that we inherit, right? The the bringing the attention back to the object of arising and passing in the present moment, or wandering and being curious about the wandering, being curious about the uh, observation. Ultimately, this sense of our own strength in taking responsibility, how maturing it is, really. And I think that that's the most important thing that we all wanted to be able to convey during this time with you all. That the sense of like, of course we want to help and offer and do interviews and give talks, and we know that there's so much out there right now. You could be listening to talks all the time and going to 100 different sanghas, and it is amazing that it's all available. And where do you maybe not need as much at times? Where do you have that sense of the Dhamma being available always in your own body and your own mind, not needing where do you have that sense of sufficiency and strength in that, and get the support that you need, when it's helpful? We're living in an amazing time, and I think that this understanding at every single person of just this, how on one hand hard it's been, and strengthening again of like, oh, having to deal with stuff on your retreat, whether it's just responsibilities of life or something, the knock on the door, the phone call, the whatever responsibility that didn't just vanish when you decided you wanted to be quiet. um, the ways in which it's like, oh, that keeps some of the sense of like not being able to just drop in and let things go. But on the other hand, how amazing it is to be able to experience something, get triggered, be mean to somebody, whatever, like to watch these unfold. And then it's like, wow, to still go back to that sensitivity in the heart, right? That it's like, oh, that's happening in the space of practice, in this container of sanctity, right? And to just be like, wow, that really hurt. That was really stressful. I feel really bad about how I treated that person. The beauty, the power of like, wow, this is how we integrate, right? This is how this practice is designed to unfold, of starting to bring in a little more complexity, a little more things that are a little more evocative. How do we understand the ways in which we fold those in? And there's that tension between, okay, you can. It's like to know you can. We can do this. We can integrate our lives with the practice, and to see, wow, what a tall order it is, right? How many folks are, it's just like one thing happened, one little thought or one little thing from the outside came in, and like the amount of spiraling that happened for a day or longer, from one influence. And in our normal lives, just how little protection we have, how little sensitivity we've been cultivating, most of us, just given the responsibilities we've had, and how tall an order it is to really try to be mindful, to try to use everything in our daily lives as practice. How reasonable actually an expectation is that? And I think it's one of these important questions as we all move forward and go back into our lives, especially during this time where so much has changed in terms of the outer expectation of our behavior and work, um, just engagement with the world. Where might we have some ability right now to change even a little bit some of the commitments we have, some of the expectations internally and externally that we have, and start to live in the reality of what we can really be aware of. It's like, that's like that thing of like walking meditation. Can you, walking slowly enough to actually be able to follow the trajectory of your own karma, to really be with it, to be like, there's this mental volition, there's this physical action. This physical action, mental, the awareness of it, and then another moment of volition, right? This sense of like, that's what we're training to do, is to be with the volitional force of the mind on the world around us and internally, and be able to try to keep pace with that, so that we're as not harming as possible, so that we're as careful as possible, so that we have the ability to learn and see and be wise, develop this wisdom of understanding. And yet the more we speed up, the harder that is to keep track of, right? The harder it is, the less reasonable it is to expect our mindfulness to be able to keep up. And so the reality of what do we expect of ourselves? How much responsibility in the world do we take on? How many hours a week do we work? How many people in our family are we visiting? How many phone calls are we doing? How many Zoom meetings are we doing? Like how many, like, as I was saying for myself, crafts or hobbies or things you love to do are you like piling on your life? And that sense of like, wow, if I was just left to those, I would still be stressing myself out with like the things I like to do, never mind the things that are more a sense of responsibility around. And very few of us can make a decision one way or the other. It's like that metaphor of the tree providing so much shade because it had cultivated its uselessness. It's hardly ever a decision of one way or the other. In the suttas, often it's framed that way. It's like, are you going to just renounce the householder life and just go with the flow of the Dhamma, or are you going to like stick it out in the house and try to make it work? And people make progress in both of those scenarios, and even in the ancient texts, and clearly in our current world. But it's also very clear in the text that that the less responsibility, the better. The more you can focus on this, the less your heart and the volitional aspect of your mind is needed elsewhere or pulled elsewhere, the more you can focus on this. And this isn't just going to happen on its own, right? It's like an incredible amount of time and patience and energy and effort and care and protection that it takes to actually try to do this and pull this off. I added it late, but if you go back to today's thing on the Flight Academy, you'll see I put a recording of Sayadaw Ulakana, who a few folks have mentioned, who was the abbot of the Chazwa Monastery for many years, hosting our retreat there. Stephen and Michelle both spoken about him. There's a recording of him offering the Karinaya Metta Sutta as a parita chanting. You can listen to that and check it out. But I think there's again one of these. I don't have it on me. There's a phrase in there. It's like that. May they be contented. Someone who has glimpsed a state of peace. This is what should be done, and they should be humble and not proud and meek and contented, easy to support, and limited in their responsibilities. It's very explicit in there, in the sense of where does practice fit into what we're feeling responsible to in our lives. I say it not because we can't make progress as lay people and doing intensive retreats. I have 100% confidence we can. 100%, And I think there is something also about that ultimate freedom that we aspire to, and to be realistic about that, to know, even in the suttas, it's like when a lay person became fully enlightened, there was this idea they really had to run to the monastery and the nunnery to go become renunciates at that point. Otherwise, you just couldn't survive. You couldn't survive in the world with that little agitation. And I think that's important to recognize. I think that that actually surviving in this world, in this context, in this, you know, these relations of production that we're all intertwined in, actually requires stress. It requires agitation. You know, it's like we wouldn't actually be able to, we wouldn't do our jobs if it wasn't, you know, if like it's like if we didn't really care, you know, and we could go live in the forest or whatever, you know. It's like the sense of really seeing that it's like there's this promise that I think a lot of the mindfulness movement tries to make, that like you can have it all. You can have your family and your job and your career, and you can change the world, and you know, have all these nice things, and you know, and get enlightened. That mindfulness is actually going to make you better at all these things, right? It's going to make you more the person you want to be. You're going to be a better worker, writer, teacher, friend, lover, parent, all these things, you know. And it's like really understanding that mindfulness has a lot of value. You know, there are a lot of things that it does cultivate, and also to recognize it's actually not designed to make you more efficient. It's not designed to make you more effective. In fact, you know, we leave retreat, we go back out in the world, and we see the ways in which it might make us very vulnerable and a little more dysfunctional, and in such a healthy way, right? That actually we don't have the taste for the anxiety, you know, that might have felt like, oh, that's what we needed to feel like ourselves and feel productive and feel efficient and feel like we're being useful. That sense of like, it actually just kind of hurts, you know. And how does that make us, again, kind of like maybe more useless, maybe much more happy and content? But I do think that we don't have a lot of ways in this Western Dharma yet of like, well, what does that mean for our lives and our lifestyle? And how can we afford to work less? How can we create the conditions for ourselves and for each other, you know, collectively also, of like, that allow lay people who really want to pursue this path to find ways of doing it where we're not just it rarely rains here in the desert, but the house is next to this gulch. And so when it does rain, there's this little basin um, that that collects water and ends up being a problem with mosquitoes. And so I finally got this little sump pump that I you know, plugged in, and you drop it down there and plug it into a hose, and it, you know, it just kind of pulls the water out basically. And so I was watering, you know, plants in the desert. They're so thirsty, and they, you know, they were stoked to get all this kind of fresh rainwater, you know. So, but I mostly was watering this one breadfruit tree that's down there. That's really not supposed to be in the desert. You know, really would really much rather be somewhere where there's a lot more rain. And so it just like loved it. And I was soaking, you know, and I was like, God, this thing forever. You know, like what is this? That's like. That, like I can't believe either this thing is so slow, or this basin just has so much water. It's unbelievable, you know. And I went down to check, and after a few hours, I noticed that the water was, it was just draining and seeping back into the gulch, you know, like I had saturated, and now it was just like I was just moving the water kind of back into this loop, you know. And I wonder about that for ourselves, of like where, you know, if we practice and then we have more ambitions to do more things in the world, like where are we sort of just like kind of like draining the water back into where it's from. Filling up the hole that we've dug. So, you know, of course, at the end of a retreat, there's, you know, this, as you all know, right? This dana, sila, bhavana, this aspiration of, you know, when we're out of these times of more exquisite retreat, bhavana focus, meditation, mind cultivation focus, that we have these practices of dana, of sila, that are more outwardly oriented in some ways, but of course actually still very internally beneficial. Generosity, and, you know, offering of our goodness, doing that which is good in the world, being generous with our minds, our hearts, our bodies, whatever way, you know, just like feeling the goodness of that, helping others, and giving ourselves that sense of self-confidence in that practice. The sila, the refraining from, that which is harmful internally and externally, these beautiful commitments we can make, and that we made at the beginning of the retreat, that live on, in modified forms in our daily lives. And then it's always sort of like, well, try to hang on to your bhavana. Just now you can kind of focus on dana and sila and try to sit once a day. And good luck. And I think that's usually pretty good advice. It's like, okay, be good little boys and girls and other genders that don't fit in there, and good luck. We'll see you next time. But I think there's also this important thing, I feel like, that we feel responsible of, like, okay, well, where do you not just go back to that? Like, where do you have the ability to dig deeper in your daily life and actually, we say we want integration. Where can you be sitting more? What would you need to let go of? What responsibilities, what pleasures, what things that you feel might be nourishing, might be things that you could at least explore for some time of letting go of. And might this be a time, given conditions are so different, that we can explore some of that. So I do, think that, everyone's different in terms of what tomorrow looks like, or is supposed to look like, for each and every one of you here. But I do think I want to offer that sense of, like, this doesn't, if we're really trying to get free, that this culture, this context, this world needs people who are going to pull it off. And it's not going to look like it did during the time of the Buddha necessarily. There are people pulling it off like they did in the time of the Buddha right now, for sure. And we go to Burma every year, and it's like there's a handful of these arahants that people know about, and they're like, oh yeah, well, this guy's here, and every time he lands somewhere, everyone goes and bothers him, so he moves. And it's like, that isn't just like a fantasy. There's a sense of, like, there's everywhere you go, there's stories about people who got fully enlightened, and they're very relational. It's like people, well, my cousin's grandparents or whatever. It's not just abstract. And so, what does that mean in our day and age, in our lives, and what ways do we, accept that the monastic sangha is not as strong here, and that there's not some of those, again, kind of cultural, but also really, like, political economy of what the monastic reality requires. What would fit? How do we design lives and livelihoods that can support, like, your full liberation? To really take that seriously as a yogi, even if you don't, you just think, oh, I'm not trying to get fully enlightened in this lifetime, or maybe, next lifetime, or five whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter. The work now has to happen, and it's not just for yourself. It's like, do we dig this in to this time and age and era, and find ways so that maybe if we don't pull it off in this lifetime, that we've dug a channel that's going to help someone else do it. What is our responsibility to our tradition in that way? To take that seriously, take that to heart as yogis. I'll read two more poems by Du Fu. These are from a series that he wrote when he was visiting the Dayun Temple for his own retreat. My heart is in a world of water and crystal. My clothes are damp in this time of spring rains. Through the gates, I slowly walk to the end. The great court, the appointed tranquil space. I reach the doors, they open and shut again. Now strikes the bell. The mealtime has arrived. This cream will help one's nature strengthen and grow. The diet gives me support in my decline. We've grasped each other's arms so many days and opened our hearts without shame or evasion. Golden orioles flit across the beams. Purple doves descend from lattice screens. Myself, I think I found a place that suits me. I walk by flowers at my own slow pace. Tang Shui lifts me from my sickly state and, smiling, asks me to write a poem. The boy draws shining water from the well. He nimbly lifts the bucket to his hand. He sprinkles water without soaking the earth and sweeps so well as if no broom has passed. The rosy dawn again lights the pagoda. The clearing mist lifts from the higher windows. Leaning blossoms cover over the path. Dancing willow trees reach down to the steps. I'm driven by these troublesome affairs. Retirement from the world must be put off. We've met and talked, our deepest hearts agreeing. How can our mouths be forced completely shut? I say goodbye and fetch my riding crop. Parting for now, I turn my head at the last. There's so much mud that can defile a man. Just listen to all the dogs throughout the land. Although I cannot get free from this yoke, I'll sometimes come to rest from all the bustle. Your presence, Abbot, acts just like white snow. How can I be upset to grasp what's hot? So let's get into our seated postures for just a few more moments. Maybe taking in these qualities of heart that I think these poems are trying to evoke, of just that sense of deep gratitude for the mind's ability to be with all these things in the temple in such a different way, to reflect upon our own ways in which we've made our homes sacred, the objects, these familiar things all around us, if we've had any sense of caring for them in a different way. This gentleness, this beauty. That sense of tomo or friendship that this might have inspired in our hearts with these worlds in which we live, perhaps these bodies and minds as well. Is there any heart sense of this appreciation, tender respect? That might be available. We feel supported by friendship with the world around us that we don't want to betray. Even as we start to change some of the pace in which we move, is there perhaps something that's shifted in our honoring of the sacredness of all things? the temple of our home, of our bodies and our minds. Do we share in that goodness? Is there any ease in the mind and heart? Any relaxation in the body that comes from this attunement toward the worthiness of all that exists, of our care, our compassion, our joy, our peace? Do we feel any sense of strength that might accompany this tenderness, this ability, this intention, this aspiration to continue to relate with care and clarity to the world within us and the world outside of us? Any place that naturally recognizes the sharing of this goodness strengthens the world and strengthens this heart and mind and body, where we can offer this beautiful capacity to see, to acknowledge, to feel, to care, to find worthy. All that we will encounter in the coming hours and coming days. We can be sensitive and care to our heart's limits, places where it's also finds its stuckness, which doesn't limit our ability to care. We just fold that in to this well-wishing for the world inside and out. This offering of the goodness and merit of our dedicated practice to all beings in all directions, excluding none, including this body and mind. Spending some moments feeling the goodness of this offering, being strengthened, offering it more and further and beyond. May all beings be safe, protected from oppression, hardship. May we all abide in happiness. May we be healthy and strong of body and mind. May we share in the deepest peace. Mm. I want to give a little time to my colleagues as well. If they want to say anything, but maybe I'll just start by just saying, the five of us have been checking in every day, and that alone has been wonderful to just actually be with everyone, even though some of us have been so distant and far. But that we've all just really been very moved by the work that you've all been doing, and are just really inspired and look forward to figuring out what are the new ways that this can help, um, keep our ability to support your practice alive. Um, and so, know that we'll do something like this again in the fall. It might be something we try to do a couple times a year. We'll try to offer some, of course, some shorter programs, some things that will include maybe also, less experienced yogis. Um, Maybe one thing I'll say is, we'll often get requests on retreats for, to be able to kind of support people more individually in their homes, in their home lives and practice. And it's never really been that practical or feasible. And I still think a lot of that would be a challenge. But one place that we feel like our gifts and capacities lie is in helping people on retreat. And so, if anyone is planning a self retreat and going to do more of this practice even without our organization, that would be something that we feel like we may be able to help folks with, and find some way. And we'd like to be able to support you doing your own intensive retreats. I think we don't tend to have as much helpful to say about a lot of like daily life, more ministerial decisions and things like that. But I do think that we would be able to find ways of supporting folks, who are really going to go be in yogi space for a while, and try to see how we might do that. So it's something to think about, and we're still talking about ourselves of what might be available or possible for that. But just to let folks know, about that possibility. I don't know. Pari, Narine, Michelle, Steve, you all want to offer anything? Yeah, you can unmute yourselves. Let's see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on. Yeah, just really wanting to acknowledge that we deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate your dedication, um, to the practice, and that keep showing up. And I think the morning sits usually even at the centers we hardly have like half of the people sitting, but here it's like 40, sometimes 50, so that is amazing, and it just gives me a lot of encouragement, and also just really realizing that this is possible, that we could just come together from all over the world, you know, from across the continents, and we can just be together, practice together, and be of support and inspiration for one another in this way, in this new way. And that I am deeply grateful that I have this opportunity to take this part of journey with you. So thank you so much.
Mm.
I'll go next. I just want to share a little story that there is a cat that comes every morning in our morning seat from 8 to 9. And I just moved to this house, so I keep seeing every morning, like the door is just right there, and he sits right there. And he will come and earlier, like 10 to 8, and the sun is just hitting right there. He will sit and we'll do our hour long, I'll ring the bell, and he will wake up, of course, stretch, and look at me, like Michelle has been just helping me to pay attention to all these relationships with beings and material, immaterial, seen, unseen. And he will look at me, say goodbye, and disappear. And I have to ask the woman that I'm renting the house from if she knew about this cat. And she said that this cat was born here a few, I don't know how many years, because it's a big cat now. And he lived here for a few years, and then they moved a few houses in the same block. And so the cat comes every morning to his original house, just like we did.
Mm. Sadhu, sadhu,
Beautiful.
sadhu.
Okay, the end. Thank you so much.
Your turn, Steve.
I think you still are both muted. There we go.
Steve, do you want to go next? Or you want me
Thank you, Michelle.
to? You're welcome, Steve.
And Jesse and Darine and Pari. And all you yogis. The retreat ends today, but you all stay in my heart. I carry you with me. Thank you for your practice.
Yeah, this has been very moving to be part of, and I feel like the meaning of taking refuge in Sangha is hopefully touching all of our hearts. So this, as has been said, that someone in Karachi, someone in Kyoto, or someone in Sydney, or someone in Rome, so many in North America and Hawaii. It's a lot of you know each other, and that feeling of, I think, needing connection in this way with our Sangha is I feel that we did it. We pulled it off. That's a good feeling, I think. We all need this so much, but the world needs this so much from us and what we can offer from this, from digging deep. And so I just want to thank all of you, yes, for those of you who the practice at home is very hard or a welcome relief, however that went. Thank you for doing this with us. And thank you, Jesse, for having a teaching team that did not know how to help you get this going. So everyone owes him a big thank you for all the support that went into this, and the flight people and invisible. And then our teaching team was great. So, just as you've said, the joy of coming together, all 5 of us. And I hope you can feel our love for each other and our love for you. It's been very profound.
Well, thanks everybody, and we have some time for sitting. We'll gather again in an hour for the metta chant and sit for whoever can join. And we'll be in touch about some of the details. People have asked about the recordings. They'll be available. Like you'll be able to get onto Flight now, I think forever. The recordings will be there for at least a couple of weeks. And then at some point we need to move them off of Zoom and put them on our own thing. And so we'll, no matter what, at some point the recordings will be up on the Vipassana Hawaii website. It may only be audio, just sort of depends on the space or whatever. But we'll be in touch soon with sort of more details about all of that and some future things. But yeah, just thanks everyone for, of course, going with the challenges of the technology and this and that, but just for showing up for each other and for us and for yourselves. It's been wonderful.
Do they know the name of our teaching team?
I don't know. Probably not.
Do you know the name of our teaching team? It's called Kamasaka or Kamasaka or the Kamasaka. So I hope you enjoy. We enjoy it a lot. So I thought you might enjoy hearing the name of it.
You have to define it, though.
I think you should, because you brought it up. How about you define it?
It's the 4 Brahma Viharas, right? Have Pali phrases for the metta and karuna, mudita. For upekkha, it's kamasaka, directly translated as the heir to our intentional actions, or I like to translate it as things are as they are. That's for equanimity. Things are as they are.
Take care, everybody.
Ah. pocket is another member of the Sangha.
Thank you. I love this format. Be on retreat without having to pack up. So, see you later.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu.